Hello everybody, my name is Maddie, and welcome back to YN Adventures. Before we begin, I just wanted to pop in here and give you my usual disclaimer that we're not trying to bully anybody or be mean. Please do not go and leave any hate or mean comments on the original fic. We're all just here to have fun. I would also like to give a shout out and a big thank you to today's author, Christmas Critter, who wrote, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, ex-reader. Let's just dive right into it. Chapter 1, Reindeer Practice. You slowly made your way up to the practice ground. You stand away from the other young doe and bucks. YN. MN came to you. Oh, MN means our mother. Alright, so this is our mom. I'm just going to call her Mom. You need to make some friends. Mother spoke to you with a calm tone. You looked at her. Okay. You would reply to your mother calmly. You began to go up to the other young reindeer. Once you got over to the groups, you heard another reindeer getting picked on for having something wrong with him. You got curious and went over to the group. You were met with a red light shining. Whoa, that's a bright nose. Wonder how he got it. Should I ask? Well, girl, just maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know. You thought as you stared in awe at the other reindeer. You decided you would go over and say hi. Hi, you look cool, you would say to the red-nosed reindeer. Thanks. The poor reindeer was crying from being made fun of. Want to be friends? You flicked your tail as you asked the question. You want to be my friend? He would sniffle as he finished the sentence. Sure, you would smile warmly. What's your name? Mine's Rudolph. He looks at you. It appeared he had cheered up some. Oh, mine's YN. You would flick your tail more. You have a cool name. It matches you. You would compliment Rudolph to make him feel better about himself. Yours is cool too, Rudolph would state, smiling some as he spoke. Want to maybe hang out after practice? Rudolph would tilt his head after he asked you that question. Yeah. Seems you are going to be my best friend. You hopped around. Soon Rudolph joined into the hopping around and playing. Seems you found yourself a friend on the first day of reindeer practice. You were happy to have a friend. Chapter 2, Hanging Out and Playing. After being dismissed, Rudolph and you decide to go play in the small pine forest. You both stop at a small clearing and start looking around. Perfect hangout, you exclaimed happily. Rudolph's nose lit up as you happily spoke. My dad showed it to me. He said this is where he hung out with his friends when he was younger. Rudolph proudly told you about this spot. You would flick your tail happily. Catch me if you can. You began to hop and run around. Rudolph chases you around as you run. Eventually, you stopped suddenly, causing Rudolph to run into you and knock you both over. You giggled as Rudolph's nose glowed out. You loved how his nose lit up. You decide to tell him about his nose. I really like your nose. I love how it lights up. You looked at him as you spoke. Thanks. No one told me about how cool my nose is. I just get made fun of for it, he sighed. You sat next to him. That's not good, you sighed as you looked at him. You couldn't tell what those feelings were when you saw him. You got butterflies in your stomach when he was near. You know it's too early to tell him how you feel. Considering we literally just met each other and all, you can't tell if he really likes you back or not. You zoned off. You were looking into his eyes. YN? You all right? He looked at you. You shook your head some. Yeah. A bright red hue appeared on your face. Sorry, I got a bit distracted. You looked away from him as you lowered your head. It's all right, Rudolph smiled warmly. I get distracted all the time, he flicked his tail. You cannot tell if you want to tell him yet. He seems to like you as a friend at the moment, but you just met a few hours ago, so you have a lot to learn about him. After hanging out, you both exchange goodbyes and head back home. You keep thinking of him and how pretty his nose is. It's as red as the beautiful rose I seen yesterday, you thought as you laid your head down to rest. Chapter 3, Another Day at Practice. You would begin to wake up as your mother nudged you to wake up. Looking around, you would slowly stand up and stretch. Your mother would put some fruit and vegetables around you to eat. You began to eat the meal your mother gave you. You would finish eating and get fully woke up with your mother. Your father was already out of the den, probably getting his harness resized, since he talked about that yesterday. After getting woke up, you would get a kiss on the head from your mother. Love you. Have a good day at practice. Your mother would after kissing you on the head. Love you too. You flicked your tail and hopped around. You giggled as you hopped out of the den. We're like Pinkie Pie. We're hopping everywhere. Hopping around would cause you to slip on some ice. The bad thing was, you were in front of everyone. You were covered in snow. A red hue appeared on your face as you lowered your ears and stood up. Now at the practice grounds, you've seen Rudolph and happily pranced over to him. Hey, Rudolph would excitedly say. Hello. You would flick your tail and hop around again. Did you hear what we're doing today? Rudolph would say more excitedly. No? What are we doing? You stopped hopping around and looked at him. We are meeting Santa and the sleigh team. He began to hop around. You would follow his actions and hop around with him. Chapter 4. The Sleigh Team, Part 1. You got up extra early this morning. Knowing you were going to meet Santa and the sleigh team, you were excited. You woke your mother up as you hopped around here. YN, calm down, your mother calmly stated. You've got to eat breakfast. She would look at you and lightly smile. You ate breakfast quickly and ran out of the den. Running as fast as your little legs could go, you made it to the practice grounds. You were panting heavily. Eventually, you caught your breath. You looked around for Rudolph. He wasn't at the practice grounds quite yet, so you sat down and happily waited. After a bit of waiting, Rudolph would come prancing along. Hey! He would smile and flick his tail as he spoke. His nose would light up as he looked at you. You would respond to him with a, hello, how are? You would look over and see some of the sleigh team walking over. It appeared the few that came out were early on coming out of the barn-like building. I don't know why the chapter ended there, but it did. Alright. Chapter 5. The Sleigh Team, Part 2. You saw some larger bucks exit a shed. The shed was farther away, so you couldn't see them as well. One of them was running to the practice grounds. You questioned why the others weren't running. Eventually, the reindeer got close enough to be heard. Hello, young. I'm Comet, the reindeer introduced himself. You look at Rudolph, who was hiding his nose. You try to comfort him by rubbing up against him. You got laughed at by some of your peers. You lowered your head and sighed. You felt tears rush into your eyes. You closed your eyes, hoping not to show tears. You didn't want to seem sensible. You opened your eyes back up. You noticed Rudolph wasn't there anymore. You looked around for him. You trotted away from the practice grounds. You knew where Rudolph would hide. You trotted into the hangout area you had hung out with Rudolph at once. Sitting by a snowbank was your favorite red-nosed reindeer. A blonde-haired elf was next to him. He was holding some sort of a book. Feeling shy, you slowly walked up. Rudolph looked to you. Hey, YN, I found another friend, he happily stated. His nose lit up out of excitement. What's his name? You stood next to Rudolph, looking at the elf. The elf looked different from the other elves you've seen running around. I'm Hermie. The elf would put his hand out to shake hands. You placed your hoof into his hand. I forgot. I'm YN. Nice to meet you. You nodded politely. Wait, why are you not with the other elves? You tilted your head. Well, I'm a misfit. He lowered his head. I don't want to do what elves do. I want to be a dentist. He looks at you. What does a dentist do? You struggled to pronounce dentist. A dentist examines, helps, and fixes teeth, he happily explained. Cool! You smiled and flicked your tail. We can be misfits together, Rudolph exclaimed. That sounds fun, you smiled. Chapter 6. A Confession. Hey, do you both want to be independent? Hermie asked as he looks at both of you. Sounds fun, you flicked your tail. Yeah, Rudolph got excited about being independent, running away from the other reindeer who were mean. You hopped around. Rudolph soon joined in on the hopping around with you. You eventually stopped hopping around. Rudolph stopped hopping soon after. Looking at you with bright eyes, Rudolph smiled when you looked at him. Rudolph, you all right? You tilt your head at him. Yeah, he spoke quietly. Are you sure? Very confused, you tilt your head at Rudolph's nose glowed brightly. Hey, YN, can I speak to you behind that tree? Rudolph looked towards a tree as you looked over to the same tree. Sure? You got even more confused as you followed Rudolph behind the tree. He lowered his head. Hey, I have been in love lately. Rudolph began to speak. He seemed very anxious. With who? Your questioning made him seem even more anxious. You? He spoke quietly. You felt your face heat up as you lowered your head. Really? You raised your head to speak to him. Yes. I felt bad for hiding it from you. Rudolph's nose glowed again. I've thought you were pretty cute from the start. You looked at him again. You smiled and went back to Hermie. Rudolph followed you back to the spot where you both stood. We didn't even, say anything in return. We just, fucking walked away. Oh, God. Chapter 7. The Adventure. You all right? Hermie looked at Rudolph, since Rudolph looked embarrassed. You looked at Hermie to see his expression. He seemed concerned. Yeah, Rudolph responded quickly. Are we ready to go? You looked at Rudolph and Hermie. Hermie nodded. Rudolph nodded as well. You flicked your tail once. Hermie began to walk into the forest. Rudolph followed him. You ran to catch up with the two. Hey, Hermie, what is a dentist? You questioned as you walked behind Rudolph. We already asked. Okay. Well, a dentist is a person who helps people with their teeth. It is quite interesting. Hermie stopped walking to show you his dentistry book. You looked at the pages that he showed you. Confusing, but interesting. You smiled at Hermie. Eventually, after a lot of walking, you and the two boys made it into a clearing. The roars of an abominable snowman could be heard. You ran to a cave with Hermie and Rudolph. The roars got louder. You and Rudolph laid together. Hermie sat next to Rudolph. You shivered in fear as the roars became more distant. You were all lucky not to have been eaten by that thingy, as Rudolph called it. You slowly peeked out of the cave. You saw a man on a dog-led sleigh. You got startled by him. Soon, learning he was here to help, you stood up and came out of the cave. He welcomed Rudolph, Hermie, and you into his sleigh. He was a miner looking for some silver, gold, or something. You weren't really listening to him since you fell asleep sometimes. You got awoken by roars. You got startled and you looked around to find the thing that was roaring. You see that you were on the edge of a snowy land. The man broke the ice with his pickaxe. You all began to drift away from the abominable snowman. It jumped into the water to try to get you all. It sunk and got out of the water, roaring at you all. You cuddled up to Rudolph. You managed to fall asleep again after about an hour. Chapter 8. What is this place? Rudolph nudged you awake. You stood up and looked around. The ice was going towards this island. It looked about abandoned and odd. It had gift boxes scattered around. You thought you were going to see someone like Rudolph, a reject because of a harmless feature. One of the boxes started to open, and of course, it was the closest one to you. You jumped back from it. The box fully opens, and out comes a doll. Right as the box fully opened, all of the other boxes began to open up. Rudolph looked around, very confused but not scared. You were afraid, and rather freeze in the icy water than be on this island. You were backing up from the scary things that called themselves misfit toys. Rudolph saw this and nudged you back to the toys. He cuddled you. That seemed to help with the fear. It felt like a century before you finally heard why each toy was there. You felt bad for the doll because she was depressed and had self-esteem issues. She shouldn't have been here on this island, as well as Charlie in the box. They did nothing to end up here. You got directions to get back to the workshop. You suggested a break from traveling. Everyone agreed on that. You went into Moonracer's castle and got a room. Rudolph and you shared a room for a night or two. Hey, YN, I have a question for you. Rudolph looked at you. He averted his gaze, since his nose started glowing. Yes, dear? You looked to him. It took him a second to say it. I love you very much, and I believe you know that. His nose shined brighter. I have one thing to ask. He averted his gaze even more. His nose got brighter and brighter as he spoke. You blushed as he spoke. This felt like a very special moment to you. I wanted to know if you would want to have a wedding when we got back to the workshop. His eyes started to tear up when he managed to ask. You gasped and started to jump around. Yes, yes, of course. You jumped back onto the bed and cuddled with him. His nose started to dim down some. There was a knock at the door. Come in, you would announce to the person on the other side of the door. The door would open and Hermie would enter. Did you ask her? He asked excitedly. Yeah, Rudolph's nose would start glowing again. Hermie did a few gentle and soft claps. What did she say? He smiled. She said yes. He started hopping on the bed. You giggled as they talked and celebrated like you weren't there. I think we need to sleep. I'll be making plans tomorrow or when we get back. Rudolph flipped his tail. Okay, congrats. He went to the door and turned the lights off and went out of the room. Sleep time. You and Rudolph wake up and meet Yukon and Hermie in the entrance of the castle. You yawned. You were going to leave today and start heading back to the workshop. You were still tired when you stepped on the ice, so you cuddled with Rudolph. You fell asleep. Chapter 9. Traveling with the One You Love. You got awoken by a sudden quaking motion. It was the ice crashing onto the land. You recognized it because of the sparkly decorations that you watched one of the elves put up. You hopped off. Rudolph hopped off as well. He stayed close to you. You would nuzzle him. Hermie was next to step off of the ice, followed by Yukon. You smiled at Rudolph. You were excited to tell your parents about Rudolph. You knew your dad wouldn't approve of him because he was weird. You knew what mattered, which was you and Rudolph were happy. Of course, you wanted to get married to Rudolph since you had spent a couple of weeks with him. Of course. You can't marry a man you just met, a reindeer you just met. You spoke to Hermie about this. He said it was a great idea. Is it? Rudolph began walking forward. He looked back to you as a way to say, come on. You began to hop to catch up to him. You were filled with a mix of excitement and anticipation as you followed Rudolph's lead. The icy landscape glistened under the moonlight, reflecting the magical atmosphere surrounding you. You couldn't help but feel a sense of adventure and hope as you hopped alongside your beloved reindeer companion. With each joyful hop, you marveled at the beauty of the winter wonderland that surrounded you. The crisp air tingled against your cheeks, and the sound of the ice cracking beneath your feet echoed in the night. It was as if the world was awakening, embracing the promise of new beginnings. As you caught up to Rudolph, you noticed the warm glow emanating from his red nose. It illuminated the path ahead, guiding you through the icy terrain. It was a beacon of light, both literally and metaphorically, representing the uniqueness and inner strength that Rudolph possessed. You exchanged glances with Rudolph, an unspoken connection forming between you. It was as if you both understood that this journey would be transformative, not only for yourselves, but also for your relationship. You were ready to face any challenges that lay ahead, fueled by the love and determination that bound you together. The companionship of Hermie and Yukon added to the camaraderie of the group. They too believed in the power of love and unity, supporting your decision to be with Rudolph. Their encouragement and friendship provided a sense of reassurance and validation, further strengthening your resolve. As you continued your hop-filled adventure, the landscape transformed before your eyes. Snow-covered trees gave way to open meadows, and distant mountains reached towards the starry night. It was a world waiting to be explored, and you and Rudolph were prepared to face it together. In your heart, you carried the dreams of sharing your love and devotion with your parents, despite the potential disapproval. You believed in the power of love to overcome any obstacles, and you hoped that they would understand the joy and happiness Rudolph brought into your life. With each hop, you left behind any doubts or fears, focusing on the present moment and the love that enveloped you. You knew that the path ahead might not always be easy, but you were confident that with Rudolph by your side, you would conquer anything. As you hopped forward, hand in hoof with Rudolph, the world seemed to shimmer with endless possibilities. The adventure had only just begun, and you were ready to embark on a love story that would defy expectations and fill your heart with warmth and enchantment. The end. Oh my god, that last chapter was actually really, really good. Oh, okay. I went into that I was not expecting that. We have a very sophisticated vocabulary up in here, up in here. And that last chapter was genuinely really well written. I applaud that. Very nice. I hope you enjoyed this reading of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer X-Reader, and if you have any stories, fan fictions, or anything that you would like me to read, narrate, or react to, leave it in a comment down below and let me know. And if you have a moment, subscribe to help out the channel. It means a lot. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And until next time, take care.